And joining us now, she's with Team USA out in California as they are training, getting set for the Olympics, which is hard to believe, just a couple of months away. She's also been broadcasting this season, calling games on ESPN Plus, covering the Sun Belt games. I speak of course, three-time National Player of the Year, Olympic gold medalist, Cat Osterman, back with us here on In the Circle. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. Out in California, sunny weather and good softball.
Yeah, I appreciate doing this show, even though, we're not Good Morning America, but who is, right? I want to ask you to start with that. What was that like to be on Good Morning America?
It was pretty cool. Obviously we pre-recorded it in Texas when I was home last, so it was a clip that we had recorded before. But just knowing that that was going to be on Good Morning America and that they're supporting the Olympics and the Got Milk campaign was really cool, really fun. Obviously, that's such a historic show to be part of.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool, I'm sure your phone blew up when that segment aired. And that's a pretty cool deal there that not too many people could say they've done.
Yeah, well, they had told me when it was going to air, and I actually forgot because, believe it or not, getting caught up in the hustle and bustle of our training camps. And so, yeah, I woke up here and someone had texted me and was like, hey, cool segment on Good Morning America. And I was like, oh no, I forgot to even tell my parents, like, this is bad news. So I got my phone real quick and was like, hey, by the way, the milk segment airs on GMA this morning. But yeah, it was fun. A lot of people got to see it, and yeah, just really cool. Very honored that Milk and GMA are, one, supporting the Olympics, but two, my journey, because there's obviously younger athletes that they could choose from.
You mentioned a journey around California with the team. They're training and playing exhibition games. Here we are. We're like, 70 days away from first game. What's the feelings around the team? Is there excitement here? What's it like here with a couple months to go here as you all preparing?
Yeah, there's always excitement. Obviously, the core of this group has been plugging away at this national team, stuff for a long time, international softball. And I think the closer we get, the more anxious they get to experience their first Olympics, which is really cool to witness and be part of. And, each time we get a little bit closer, there's, here and there, a little bit more questions about what it's going to be like. And obviously, in the middle of a pandemic, I don't really know exactly what it's going to be like, but try to relate to them, like what it was like the first two times. And just, as a group, we're growing closer and closer together and helping each other through, tour, being away from home, those kind of things. But it's been really fun. It's nice to get some good competition. We're playing some games. We have Haley Wagner, who's been traveling with us to give us another arm. Her and Kalani, went and joined the LMU team the other day to pitch against us. So that way we saw the LMU pitchers, but then we also saw our own pitchers to make it competitive. So doing some things, in scrimmage situations to slowly be able to make it a little bit more competitive and get ourselves ready.
And so important, too, to get that work in. I know we all been in Florida previously as well and getting kind of together and everybody's had to deal with this. It's been a unique year. As you mentioned, with the pandemic, it's not your normal traditional tour and things like that, but you've been able to make it work and get the work in and get ready for Tokyo.
Yeah, we've been able to make it work, which is nice. A lot of scrimmaging each other, which sometimes gets old fast, but we're able to make it work, and we're just fortunate that we do have as much time together as we have, and that we will in June as well.
Now, you have a busy schedule, and you decided to add more busy to your schedule. You decided to go into broadcasting this year. You've been doing games at Texas State on ESPN Plus, doing a lot of their games, especially in the Sun Belt. What made you decide to go in that route, and what was it like this year being in the booth over there instead of being in the coaching dugout? You're in the booth there calling games.
Yeah, well, I did some analyst work with Longhorn Network when they first launched, when I was working at St. Edward's, since that was Division II and our schedules were relatively not conflicting. I was able to do a lot of work there, and I enjoy it. I enjoy talking the game and being able to share not only what's happening in the game, but also just players' journeys and things like that. So I knew that the Sun Belt had signed the agreement with ESPN Plus, which meant more games were going to be on streaming. And so I quickly asked Coach Woodard, I was like, hey, who do I need to talk to do some of the games? And they told me Lucas Haskins, who's the producer there at Texas State. And so I shot him a text real quick and was like, hey, here's when I'm home. I would love to do as many games as possible. I want to be able to come watch the games anyways. And with COVID, you have to be on the pass list or this and that. And I was like, might as well work while I'm there to watch. And I just felt like I know the program so well. I know I know most of the players, but I just, after having been there 6 years, know the program. And so wanted to be able to still be able to witness what they were going to do this year, because I just knew deep down that they were going to have a great year, and they have. So jumped back in the booth. I loved it. Have to work a little bit on separating myself and not saying the we's, since I'm no longer on staff there at Texas State. But there have been a little bit of moments where I've missed coaching, and I really had wished that I would have been able to continue to do it. But I made a decision. I'm gonna run with it for a while. Won't ever say I won't return to coaching. I don't have any plans to right in the immediate future. I would love to continue to explore the broadcasting, because I really do enjoy that part.
Biggest thing you learned from doing, I think you did 9-10 games this year. Biggest thing you learned that you'll use here moving forward when you broadcast in the future?
I think the biggest thing I learned early on, but sometimes you don't have to talk on every single player. You don't have to talk in every single moment. You can let the moment build up. And there are times where we get in the middle of a story, or we want to continue, and it's like, well, this play is an immediate play. Like, it's going to be game changer possibly. Let's see what happens. And the fun part I like is being able to add as a pitcher what pitch I think is coming or might be coming. And then when they throw it, it makes you look like a genius, but really you've just done it a few times, so you know what's going on. But that's always nice, because then you can explain to the audience why that off-speed pitch or that rise ball was the great call right there.
Describe the feelings as a player, being in the circle pitching, being in the dugout as a coach, and now in the booth broadcasting. Are you more nervous with one or the other? Do you feel the same with each three? Describe the feelings and nerves and emotions there on all those three, because you've done all three now.
Oh yeah, I think there's definitely more nerves when you're coaching, because you have no control of what's actually going to happen. You can call a pitch, you can set your defense right, you can do it, but you don't control what actually happens. Your athletes still have to execute. So there's more nerves and stress there. In the circle, there's definitely more stress in the fact that you just have to perform, but you're in control. So there's no one really to blame but yourself. I think obviously the less stressful of the three is in the booth. So
okay.
Well, I'd like to stay there, keep my hair from graying too much.
That's interesting, because I've talked to your teammate Allison Kimes. She got in the booth this year, did some games for on ESPN Plus. She says she's more nervous in the booth than when she was playing, and even like there, because she could control what she's pitching. She says to her, for some reason, pitching in front of thousands of people is not a big deal, but yet in the booth she kind of gets nervous. But you're the opposite.
Well, I think sometimes people get in the booth and you're scared to mess up, or you're scared to misspeak, and you have the opportunity to correct yourself. So if you say a word wrong, or you say a phrase that doesn't really make sense, you can go correct yourself. No one expects you to be 100% perfect and say the right line all the time. It's not acting. So I think that for me is the part where I may start a sentence and it doesn't make sense, but then I'll come forward and I'll be like, okay, this is what I really meant. And just being able to explain that. And, sometimes people understand what you say, sometimes they won't, but it's just part of it. I'm okay. I'm okay making an error on TV.
Well, you didn't make many. I didn't see many when I heard you on the call there. So I think you're in the right track there. And you picked a great year to jump in, because this was a monster year for Texas State and the Sun Belt. The Sun Belt tournament going on in Troy, Alabama, as we talk, 10-team field, double elimination format. But let's talk about the Sun Belt here. And first, start with Texas State, since you got to see them up close. We had Ricky Woodard on before there earlier in the year. Magical year, great pitching and offense. What stood out about this team this year? What made them so special here to a point where they're the number 2 seed, and even despite whatever happens in the conference tournament, they're going to be back in the NCAA tournament? What jumped out about them this year?
In my opinion, they had the most complete team Coach Woodard has ever put together. So you have the power in the middle of the lineup with Sarah Vandeford, Tara Altman, and even Haley McKay, who often gets overlooked because the other two have been performing so well this year. But at the same time, you have a true staff in the circle. You see Jessica Mullins and Megan King quite a bit, but Pudge Barrera and Tori McCann have come in and been able to pick up some innings and just change the pace a little bit when they need to. And I think the biggest addition is speed. There have been years where Coach Woodard had 1, maybe 2 players who could run, but this year they have 4 and 5 kids that can just run and steal bases. And I don't think they've set the school record for stolen bases in a season yet, but they're probably going to get pretty close, because You have Hannah Earls, Piper Randolph, Kylie George, who transferred over from A&M, Marissa Cruz, like all of them can run and run well. And so it's been fun to see the combination of speed and power this year, where normally it's one or the other for their offense. So it really is one of the most complete teams that they've had. And both Megan King and Jessica Mullins have been able to be consistent in the circle, especially here in the last month, which is when you need to catch fire the most.
How much was your team, led by Randy Rupp, that made the NCAA tournaments, won the Sun Belt tournament in 2018? Did that pave the way to get these athletes into Texas State? Such a competitive state to recruit, obviously, but watching them in person, I kind of agree. I see more athletic team than it was, even with all due respect to the Randy Rupp teams, more depth there and more athletes, especially offensively. Did that kind of open some doors making that run when you were on the staff?
I think it opened some doors. There's a pipeline that, not official pipeline, but the unofficial pipeline for pitchers. Coach Woodard has had, I think it's up to 5 now from Barbers Hill High School, starting with Chandler Hall back, early 2000s. So Chandler Hall came in, and then Randy Rupp followed her, Megan King followed her. Jessica Mullins wanted to follow Randy Rupp. I remember when we were first getting emails and letters from Jessica Mullins, and she followed Randy's career. She would, write whatever stats Randy had for the week. She knew what Randy could do, and she wanted to be able to come do that at Texas State as well. So there were kids that, they caught sight of Texas State and the program they put together. And if you come to camp or you come on campus, it's hard not to fall in love with the campus. It's gorgeous. There's a river that runs right through it, a park that you can go lay out by the river out right there in the middle of campus. So it's a gorgeous place that a lot of people don't know about. And so when kids get on campus, a lot of times they fall in love. And another one of those, Sarah Vanderford, she's wanted to be at Texas State since she was young. She was coming to camp there, I think, before I was even there. And she just always wanted to be at Texas State. And it's fun when you get those kids, the ones that really want to be there. They're fully invested. And anytime you can get a core of those, it's gonna turn out well. And the freshman class they have right now is pretty solid, and going to see them develop, it could be a potent offense for a while.
Yeah, I remember we had Coach Woodard on. She was even surprised how farther advanced they were at that time during the season. That's before they even went on the big run, maybe even ahead of schedule. Do you feel they're kind of ahead of schedule where you thought they would be right now?
I think that freshman class is learning to deal with adversity. So you see some streaks coming in on, they peak and valley, but I think the biggest thing is they've been able to just jump in and roll with it. You don't see them necessarily panicking because they're a freshman. You don't see them necessarily making dumb errors because they're a freshman. Not that they haven't made errors, but just they're really able to come in and deal with adversity. So they're probably farther along maturity-wise as far as being able to handle the adversity of the game.
They're the 2 seed here in the Sun Belt tournament. The 1 seed, of course, the regular season champions, the Cajuns of Louisiana. What stands out about the Jerry Glasgow's 2021 edition, led by obviously Summer Ellison? Their ace pitchers won the pitcher of the year in the Sun Belt.
Yeah, Summer's always been she's been the cornerstone for that program since she got there. She has kept them in so many ball games, won big ball games for them. So she's their staple. That's who they're going to rely on going forward. But Jerry's done a great job of being able to get in some big transfers, been able to mesh a lot of transfers, to be honest. Sometimes when you bring in that many people, it can change team chemistry and things like that, but they have found ways to win ball games and stay in ball games just long enough for somebody to come through and score. But he does the same thing. He always has speed and power. He likes to run. He'll continue to run until the game's over. There's no mercy in his mind. So you see the big stolen base numbers for them, but they have the sticks that can swing it too. I don't think they have as many home runs this year as they normally are known for, but at the same time, you don't have to leave the yard in order to score runs, especially if you have people who have speed. So he's done a good job of manufacturing runs with the offense he has, and when they need to. And then you see other times where they just catch fire and lead off, fire on all cylinders and feed off of each other. But I think Sierra Bryant, obviously player of the year in the Sun Belt, sparks that offense. So for him to get her was huge, because that's what he needed, was a kind of a spark plug to really get that offense going.
Right, and you're right. They don't hit they're not the big power bats like they've had in the past. They've kind of scored in different ways this year. And then, of course, Summer, obviously winning pitcher of the year. Of course, Sarah Vanderford, you mentioned, was the freshman of the year in the Sun Belt. And then you got a team like Troy, who's the host. They're the 3 seed. They got Leanna Johnson that led them away, first team all conference. What makes her so good?
Leanna Johnson is the same, and I think that's what makes these top 4 teams in the Sun Belt separate themselves this year is just the pitching. All 4 of them have at least one stud pitcher, but they actually have a couple behind that can do the job. So they all have staffs that they've been able to rely on to continue to be competitive. But Leanna Johnson came in as a freshman and made her, put her feet in the ground for Troy and just ran with it. She spins the ball incredibly well. She has upspin, curve rise, a little bit of screw, probably a backdoor, locates the ball well. So I think for her, she's just continued to fine tune her pitches, not necessarily recreate herself, but fine tune her pitches and be able to use them in different planes in order to get so many strikeouts. I mean, she's in the talk nationally for strikeout numbers, and that's big in our conference, especially when you face, ULL and Texas State. And then they go off, obviously play the Power Fives in their surrounding area as well. So she's really been the leading horse for them. Offensively, they've always been able to be a team that they spread the wealth. There's not necessarily one hitter. Katie Webb has been there for a while. I feel like she should be a COVID senior this year, but we'll see. I may be off a year, but I feel like she's been there forever.
Yeah.
But she's another spark plug for them offensively. She'll just foul off pitches and she'll just kind of be that nag until she finally breaks through, and they feed off of her as well. So I think when you talk about Troy and South Al, their offense is a little more spread out. There's not necessarily one staple person who they're going to rely on, or even two. But they've found ways to win, and really when you have a pitcher, anything can happen.
You mentioned South Alabama. You're right. Katie Webb, by the way, first team all conference, leads Troy in hitting. She seems like she's been there for 100 years. So I lose track on how many years they have and all that. But South Alabama is kind of the interesting case because they have incredible wins at Georgia and at Alabama. I believe you called the series when they beat Texas State up at Texas State. High peaks, but they kind of scuffled here down the stretch a little bit. Some people think they need some wins in this conference tournament to secure a spot in the NCAA tournament. I think they're in, but nonetheless, what stood out about you seeing South Alabama this year?
Well, I think, again, we talk about it, and in this conference right now, what's separating the top 4 is their pitching staffs. So they have freshman Olivia Lackey, who obviously got the big win against Alabama. She throws the ball well, throws hard, upspin. I think in the long run, she's going to need an off speed to stay very successful in this conference. But she came in and she keeps them in ball games, whether it's her high strikeout numbers or she just gets a lot of pop-ups. She's able to keep them in ball games. And you talk about the matchup with Texas State, and I think head coach Becky Clark actually took a gamble, and she went her number 2, Allie Hewen, against Texas State's number 1, Jessica Mullins, and won that gamble. And so I think that really set the tone for the rest of the weekend. Now you're also talking about a series where the games weren't decided, but actually the first 2 games had very little offense on both sides. The third game, both teams found their bats a little bit more. So you're talking about 2 games that really could have gone either way if Texas State finds a hit, or if South Alabama had found a hit at some point, because game 2 was won on a bases loaded walk. It wasn't even a hit ball. So it was a good matchup. I think both teams were looking for their offense that weekend. South Alabama was able to just muster just enough more. But their offense is what's going to have to pick up for them to get some wins in this tournament, to be honest. I think there were definitely times that they had runners in scoring position that they weren't really able to capitalize. And it's sad because they have speed too. They have 3 lefties who put the ball in play incredibly well. In fact, those 3 were the 3 that had the most of the offense against Texas State, but they just couldn't drive those 3 in. So, they're going to have to find ways to drive that speed in, even though that speed is getting on base. And in the national scene, I'm probably going to have to agree they're going to need a couple wins this weekend. I would love to say the Sun Belt is a four bid league. Just historically, it's been hard enough to get 3 in. So I think a lot of questions are going to revolve around, what is the selection committee going to do with the Big Ten and the fact they only played
conference only. That's going to be the hot topic on Sunday night. So somebody's going to be upset.
Yeah, if there's openings, would obviously love to see 4 teams in. I think all 4 are obviously very deserving, and I don't know that in years past we could have necessarily said that 4 were honestly really deserving.
I agree. Is this the strongest you remember the Sun Belt being, especially in the circle? I mean, we talked about all those arms. All those arms we've talked about have had big wins this year and are going to be, if they show up in a regional, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, this is probably the strongest I feel like the Sun Belt's been from top to bottom, to be honest. And there was a separation, don't get me wrong, from the top four to the bottom half. But at the same time, you know, Georgia Southern's not far off. They didn't hit very well in the weekend series they had at Texas State, but they have freshman pitcher Leah Garcia, who, if she develops, she's going to be another arm that the Sun Belt's going to have to watch out for. App State had a couple arms, I believe, that are graduating this year. Longnecker and Longnecker. She throws it very well. So there have been some really good arms that come through the Sun Belt, and you just have to be able to surround, you know, your pitcher with some hitters that can get just enough runs if they can keep you in a game. But yeah, this is the strongest I have seen the Sun Belt.
It's unbelievable. And you know, it's the number 6 rated RPI conference. I know you disagree because you think they should be number 5 ahead of the American. You and I have talked off air about that, bragging rights there. But you make a legitimate argument because Texas State, to me, they've been a top 25 team most of the year. Louisiana's a top 25 team. Troy's been quietly sneaking in there. I mean, this is of those 4 teams, kind of break down, assuming they all make the postseason, they can make some noise, right? Is there a team that you would say, hey, it wouldn't surprise me if they pull an upset and won a regional?
You know, I think obviously Louisiana and Texas State are primed to where they could upset and win a regional. Both of them have been able to show that they can play with the powers to be. You know, Texas State has had 2 one-run games against Texas. They beat A&M, they beat Baylor, split with Tech. You know, they've been in game, beat Mississippi State, beat Ole Miss. So they've been able to hang in there. And ULL, same thing. But they're routinely in there. So I feel like them winning a regional isn't as surprising as some of the other teams in the Sun Belt. Depending on offensively, if South Alabama and Troy can get on a upswing, like momentum offensively, then they may be able to jump in there too. That would be my only question is offensively, can they gain some momentum to where they could? I think their pitching can keep them in games at regionals.
Right. Timely hitting is going to be so pivotal once we get to the tournament. Timely hitting is going to be key in this conference tournament. Just describe what it's like to be part of a Sun Belt tournament. You won a tournament championship. You're on the staff when you all won in 2018 up in Lafayette, as a matter of fact. Describe this tournament because it's unique, unlike others. Double elimination format with its unique bracket. Describe it.
Yeah, so right now you have ULM, Coastal, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State all have to play for the right to enter the tournament. And then you have the other teams waiting to play them, obviously. So Texas State will play a winner of someone in there. I haven't memorized the bracket, but after you get to the play-in game, it's double elimination up until the championship game. And then the championship game is winner take all, which is where in 2018, actually in 2016 and 17, we got to the championship game, lost to Lafayette, and then had to come back and play them. 16 and 17, we lost that game. 18, we won that final game. And, you know, if you're on the other end where you were the winning team and you don't get double dipped, you just get you get beat once. That's where I think you start to say, well, why is it double elimination until that point? But at the same time, as we talked about, a lot of times in that environment and in the past, the Sun Belt hasn't had enough pitching to where if you did a double dip for the championship game, whoever came out of losers bracket, you're not going to have arms, and then you're not going to be primed and ready for a regional because you're going to spend all week recovering. So it's an interesting tournament, but I think it also really gives teams a chance to catch fire and make a run at it. I mean, in 2016, when we made regionals for the first time while I was on staff at Texas State, we truly got in because of our run at conference tournament. We put a good 10-game stretch together to end regular season. But then we actually upset South Alabama at the tournament, which I believe flipped us and allowed us to get into the tournament, not them that year. So it can make a difference. I think this year it may make a difference between those 2, 3, and 4 if all 4 can't get into the NCAA tournament.
Do you like the format? Do you think it should be tweaked? The benefits, does it help you get ready for the NCAA tournament? What's your thoughts on the format itself?
I think it helps you get ready for the tournament. I mean, it's double elimination, which regionals is going to be until the championship. Now, granted, obviously in regionals, you have to beat a team twice. But at the same time, it allows your 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds to be able to truly be ready to go and ready to play. I mean, they'll play tomorrow. Obviously, they'll play, I think, the second round of games tomorrow. But it gives them time to get there, get rested, at the same time not having to rush and turn around and play. So it rewards your effort from season. I don't know that I would tweak it a whole lot. I feel like it has been pretty successful in allowing teams that either can get hot offensively to carry the load, or if you do have a pitching staff, to truly be able to rely on that as you go through.
Texas State's the 2 seed. They'll play either Georgia Southern or Georgia State. I'll give the results after the segment here. Interview's done on that. Troy will play UTA. Now, Troy's the host team. They're the 3 seed, but they're the host team. How big of an advantage is it to be at home? Is that a big deal? Is that overblown? And what I don't know if you've been to Troy, I would assume. What's the facilities like over there?
Troy's facilities are really nice. They have they have a gorgeous field. I think it's turf, if I remember right, in the outfield. But it's a great setup, nice stadium. They have a little indoor hitting area that everyone hits in. So it's a nice setup. We had a tournament there in 17, I believe. And it was awesome. They run it great. But I think the advantage of being at home is just you're in a place that you're comfortable with. Obviously, you're sleeping in your own bed. You're not in a hotel. You didn't have to travel, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a very familiar setting. But, I think it depends on your team, too. Texas State's really comfortable at home, but we hosted the tournament twice while I was there, and neither one was a very great outcome for us. But yet, when we went to Troy, South Al, and ULL, we were in the championship game every time. So it just depends on your mindset going into the tournament. Because
can it be a distraction? Can it be a distraction to host?
A little bit, because obviously so much family can come and so many people and fans can be there. So it can be a little bit of a distraction. And sometimes you can almost get too comfortable and be like, oh, we're at home, we're fine. Well, you still have to stay focused and play. And so a lot of times too, if you travel, you can as a coach, you can control those distractions a little bit more.
You're looking also at the bracket. You got the 4 seed South Alabama playing Appalachian State, the 5 seed. That's a big game for South Alabama. We've talked about them perhaps needing some wins. I don't think they could afford to lose that game and get all of a sudden to the losers bracket. Could be digging themselves a hole. Louisiana, obviously the 1 seed, they'll play either Coastal Carolina or Monroe. 2 years ago when we had the Sun Belt tournament, you had Monroe make a deep run, which shocked people, and then Coastal Carolina. In fact, I think it was Coastal Carolina got to the championship game, lost 1-0 to Louisiana. Is there a team that's a 5 seed or below? Who's a team that can make a shocking run in this tournament that people would be talking about later this week as talking about, hey, they could be a team that steals a bid from somebody?
Yeah, so I'm going to actually, as we're talking right now, Monroe's winning 6-3.
There you go.
But Monroe has a reputation of being able to turn it on all of a sudden during the week of conference tournament. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them make somewhat of a run. And yes, you say they'll run into UC or ULL the very first game out of this elimination game that they're playing right now. But they just upset ULL in the last game of the conference series. So they don't believe that they're ever overmatched. They truly have a fight that is admirable. They will fight through tooth and nail for every pitch throughout the game. So wouldn't be surprised if they put up some good games. And the other I mentioned, and as I said, I didn't see their offense a lot in the series against Texas State, but Georgia Southern does have a good offense. And if Garcia can stay healthy for them and be able to throw enough innings, I feel like they might be able to make a little bit of a run too, because they had some games where they put up really good offensive numbers. I just personally didn't get to see it in the 3-game series against Texas State.
No, you didn't get to see it, but certainly a team that it's capable of doing that. A team that saw it up close was South Alabama. They swept South Alabama. That's kind of why some people think South Alabama needs some wins this week, is because of that sweep. But Georgia Southern, they've been playing pretty well here down the stretch. Since they got swept at Texas State, they swept South Alabama at home and swept Georgia State at home. Have some momentum going into the tournament. That could be a positive, right? Going in a conference tournament with some momentum.
It can. And, prior to that series with Texas State, Coach Kim Dean talked about the fact that she was just waiting for every part of the game to start firing on all cylinders. And she was like, when we catch fire, people aren't going to know what we can do. And she obviously hoped it was going to happen that weekend at Texas State. It didn't. I think they only mustered 6 or 7 hits for the whole 3 games combined. But they obviously went back to work after that series and turned it around. So they really have been able to put up some numbers. They're led by Bailey Wilson and Faith Shirley. who swing it really incredibly well. Micaiah Freeman gets on base and she can wreak havoc when she runs and just being overly aggressive sometimes. And so if they can continue that momentum, they'll upset some people, and they may knock some people out of that postseason talk.
Yeah, that's why people always love the Sun Belt Conference tournament, because there's some upsets, some results that kind of get people's attention, and kind of unpredictability, right? I mean, it's always because the teams like those, they want to spoil the party. It's like a new season. They're playing freely, and sometimes maybe the favorites play maybe a little uptight early in the tournament, right?
I have witnessed where, one of those seeds that's 5 and below really just catches fire and they make it to the semifinal or even to the championship game, and haven't pulled off a win in the conference tournament yet, but they really made a run, which then allows everyone to kind of turn and be like, oh, and you wish they would do that throughout the whole season to make this conference that much more competitive, but sometimes it just takes a little longer for them to get in a groove. We keep talking about South Al. Coach Becky Clark talked about the fact that her team's young and she was waiting for them to really just fully gel. She felt like they were slowly getting there, but they were getting stronger as season went on because they were building, because she had so many new faces on this roster. So sometimes it just takes a little longer for some clubs other than others, but really, to be honest, it's going to be an interesting tournament to see who catches fire and if anybody can get some upsets this season.
You mentioned some of the youth there. You mentioned the youth at South Alabama, Texas State's young. Can this league now maintain this, this great year and maintain this moving forward? You had the peak there where you were there, obviously there with Rupp and company. You were a 2 to 3 bid league every year. And then there was a drop off. Recently you've been a 1 bid league, trying to fight to be back to a multiple bid league. I've talked to Coach Woodard about that. Do you believe now, moving forward with the foundation you've seen from these teams, can this league now be consistently, if not anywhere between a 2 to 4 bid league here moving forward every year?
I think they can. I think you see them being able to recruit not just one pitcher, but as we mentioned, pitching staffs, being able to recruit 3 and 4 power hitters, not just one, and then hoping to piece the right pieces around that to manufacture 1 and 2 runs. You've seen upsets to where eyes will now turn to those programs. I mean, I know personally in the state of Texas, Texas State is in conversation when you talk about some of the best programs in that state, because they are, they beat A&M, they beat Baylor, they beat Texas, and not just with Randy Rupp. They did it this year without Randy Rupp and with a whole new group of faces. So it shows what Coach Woodard's done with that program. Obviously, Louisiana's almost always going to be getting a bid. They have that power. They're the powerhouse program in this conference. But Troy doing the same thing. Beth has done a great job there of being able to get herself a solid pitcher, get herself a couple behind to take some pressure off Leanna Johnson to where she doesn't have to throw 3 games in a weekend. But then finding the pieces offensively with Webb and Calhoun, and you build that foundation, you get a really competitive program, and then you convince kids, okay, I want you to come be the next Katie Webb. I want you to come push Calhoun. I want you to come, maybe you won't start as a freshman, but Leanna Johnson's going to be a senior and you're going to take over for her. And kids want to be part of a winning tradition. So once you get that, I think this conference is at the height of competitiveness, and I think they'll be able to carry it forward, which when you're that competitive, you can obviously make a better schedule, which increases the RPI for the program or for the conference. And
certainly make noise in the postseason. I mean, certainly Louisiana is going to be a threat in the postseason, likely goes to Baton Rouge. They could push LSU there. Texas State, probably Texas or Oklahoma. If they get put in Austin, they've pushed Texas there. I think that could be a problem for Texas there if Texas State's in their deal there with the pitching there. And then even South Alabama, Troy, their arms, they could be a threat. One of them probably ends up at Alabama. The other one maybe ends up in Gainesville or Tallahassee and could pose some problems. And as long as you got great arms, you always have a chance to win games. I think that's why the future of the Sun Belt really looks, I think, the best it's looked in a while.
Yeah. I mean, when Randy Rupp stepped on campus at Texas State, Coach Woodard said, if you have a pitcher who wants the ball but gives you a chance to win every time she's in the circle, you can build a competitive program around that. And the Sun Belt has been able to do that now, getting pitchers to where they believe can be competitive every game that pitcher steps in the circle. And so I think the majority of our programs now are in that upswing to where they've been able to find some young pitchers that truly have some really good talent that they'll be able to build around.
You won the conference in 2018 there. Describe the feelings, what it was like to win that conference championship there in the Sun Belt there as a coach.
Oh, that was incredible. I mean, I think just that senior class we had that year, you mentioned Randy Rupp, her twin sister, Sarah Rupp, Ariel Ortiz. Um, I can't remember who all were seniors. I think Jalen Young, Sierra Steimel. Just you had so many seniors that had put their heart and soul into the program. Sarah Rupp, Randy Rupp, and Ariel Ortiz obviously spent 4 years there, and they truly wanted to leave that program better than they found it, and they did. Ariel Ortiz holds RBI record, home run record, double record, you name it. Now Sarah Vanderford's coming up right behind her, may break those, but they truly came in and elevated the Texas State program. So to see that pay off with a championship for them was awesome. And just, it came down to the final game, and just to be able to see them celebrate winning a conference title was huge. And just to know, the passion and the love that they have for the program and the game, it was really cool to be part of.
Last question here before I let you go. For all the teams there in Troy, what's going to be the key factor, the ingredient that's going to put someone over the top and hoist that trophy and win the conference championship? What's the key to winning that tournament?
Timely pitching and timely hitting. You don't want to let the best hitter beat you if you don't have to, and at the same time you have to figure out a way to get that timely hit if needed. And so I think for the teams that don't get the first round or the first day bye, it's about recovery and how fast can you get your kids off their feet, recovered, and focused on the next game. But you just got to catch fire and roll with it. Momentum has to continue to keep going. You can't really have peaks and valleys in this tournament, because if you take one inning off, that team on the other side of the field is ready to come after you.
Should be an exciting tournament. I'm not going to ask you who to pick. We know who you're going to root for, but I know it's going to be an exciting tournament. You're going to be following it closely, and I think they're going to get 4 in. I know you're hoping for 4. You're going to be cautious. You're going to say 3 for sure. 3 are locks. I think everybody agrees. Louisiana, Texas State, Troy, pretty much locks. I think South Alabama maybe has some work to do, but I still think with those wins on the road at Texas State, at Alabama, and at Georgia, that's got to still count. And I think they'll sneak in. But I do agree. They don't go 0-2, just win some games, take care of business, as they say. But it should be exciting. This was awesome. It was good to talk to you. I know under your busy schedule here, just you're all over the country right now and doing stuff. Heck, we saw you over the AU draft as well on Monday night. That had to be a blast, too, there, being a part of that.
Yeah, it's fun. AU was a great experience, and to have a draft and be able to be part of that, to welcome the next crop of youngins, it's always exciting. So exciting things happening in the world of softball all the way around. Appreciate you having me. I love my time in the Sun Belt, so it's fun to share my 2 cents. And I think if there's one parting words I'd love to say about the Sun Belt, it's just all the coaches in the Sun Belt are amazing people and truly pull for each other to be able to make the postseason and be successful. So it's exciting for me to still be able to continue to be part of the Sun Belt in a small way, calling games at Texas State. And then obviously you let me share my knowledge of the conference.
And we appreciate you for sharing your knowledge with us, Kat. Appreciate it. Enjoy it, and good luck. And obviously we're all rooting for you and the girls on over there, and looking forward to seeing you pitch up there in Tokyo. But thanks for joining us here on In the Circle.
Thank you. Appreciate it.